Hey, it's Bilal, and this is Deep Sea, the podcast about seeing the world more deeply. I don't usually talk about something so topical, but I thought the outbreak of the coronavirus tells us much about human nature. I won't talk much about the specifics of the virus, there's a lot on that elsewhere, but rather I'll focus on what we can learn from the virus about ourselves. But for context, I will give some details on the virus. Unless you've been cut off from the world, you will know something about the coronavirus, also known as nCoV, and more properly, recently, it's been named as COVID-19. We know that it's a highly contagious virus, which probably originated in bats and broke out in the city of Wuhan in China. Wuhan is the equivalent to, say, Chicago in the US. We know it affects the respiratory system. The number of cases is changing every day, but by the middle of February, we know there's been around 70,000 reported cases, although there are likely to be many, many more, and there's been almost 1,700 deaths. The vast majority of reported cases and deaths have occurred in China, around 98 to 99% in fact. And there's been huge efforts inside and outside of China to contain the spread of the virus, though many do expect the virus to spread more broadly outside of China. Now, what I find fascinating about the virus is how we humans respond to something like this. A highly infectious virus that has the potential to spread rapidly across the population of the world, often with fatal results. It can be the stuff of nightmares. Specifically, I'd like to highlight 5 observations. First, we tend to see an explosion in conspiracy theories. We humans love to find human agency and meaning behind catastrophes. So suddenly, the expert opinions of virologists and epidemiologists can be disregarded, and non-experts like ourselves can, after a few internet searches, discover the real truth behind the virus. So with COVID-19, many amateur virologists believe that the virus was actually made in a laboratory and was intentionally or accidentally leaked. Typically, it was either the US or the Chinese military behind it. Some believe the number of deaths in China is much, much higher, and in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands, and that there's been a huge effort to hide all these dead bodies. And this conspiratorial way of thinking is actually quite a common feature of humans. And they tend to explode around events like financial market crashes, political or terrorist events, or natural catastrophes. Think about the amount of conspiracy theories that are around the terrorist attack of 9/11, or indeed the 2008 financial crisis. And invariably, there is often no way one can show any evidence to conspiracy-minded people to change their minds. My second observation is that it feeds into the human urge to see events in apocalyptic terms. By apocalyptic, what I mean is the thinking that we are on the verge of some kind of world-ending moment that will either end the world or dramatically change it to something perhaps better. On this topic, I actually read an excellent book called Heaven on Earth by Richard Landis, and he talks about how apocalyptic movements and thinking have actually been a recurrent feature in human societies throughout time and have often led to some important cultural movements and development in the world. And he argues that this way of thinking was behind the beginning of most religious movements like Christianity or Islam, or political movements like communism and Nazism, and even exacerbated events like Y2K. It seems it's part of human biology to think in these terms, that something will happen that will cleanse the world and lead to heaven on earth. And the latest coronavirus feeds into this way of thinking. Many are extrapolating the deaths from the virus to world-ending proportions. And for some, it could be positive in the sense that a massive decline in population could cleanse the earth of parasitic humans that have brought about climate change. And for others, it would allow a new fairer system to emerge as the exploitative capitalistic system collapses. But the point here is that extrapolating the virus in these apocalyptic terms is actually quite a normal feature of human societies. And often, when the world doesn't end, the lessons and processes that one underwent can often morph into something more based in reality and healthy for society. Third, and this is kind of more an observation about our current political strains of thinking, the virus likely accelerates certain existing sentiments like anti-immigration, xenophobia, and distrust in governments. So, if we didn't need any more rationale to be fearful of people from China, this virus just adds to that. And then, for the more conspiratorial thinkers amongst us, this adds to the case against authority. My fourth observation is, if we bring this back to the personal, we are also tied into the digital world that's easy to lose sense of biology and our bodies. We are so in our heads that we can forget that we do actually have bodies. And this virus reminds us that we are very much off the earth. A virus can sneak up on us and completely debilitate us. So we do have bodies and we are in nature, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. Finally, if we do in our minds extrapolate the virus to its worst ends, it could allow us to reprioritize what's important in our life. So if you knew you had weeks and months to live, what would you do? Even if this is unlikely, we can use this form of visceral thinking to help clarify decisions. We could be dithering about issues such as whether to start a new relationship, quit that job, or reconnect with old family and friends. And we can use the fears of the virus to help make those decisions. So I can't really predict the future, but hopefully these observations do shed some light on how to navigate the coming months as the news gets filled with stories of the virus. Thanks for listening. Please tell a friend about the podcast. Leave a rating on iTunes, Spotify, Overcast, or wherever you go for your podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter. My handle is @BilalHafiz123. You can also follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn, or on my blog, bilalhafiz.com. For my research work, you can go to macrohive.com. I'll be back soon, so tune in then.